Normally, if I'm setting up a bubble that I'm sculpting, I want it to be even wall thickness throughout the whole thing so the whole piece moves. But with this raven shape that I'm making, I set it up so that I'm a little bit thicker at the tip because I want to have a wider, heavier mass of clear glass down at the tail and at the bottom, where later we'll end up attaching it and affixing it to another piece. So to do that, I want to have that thickness and that weight where it's going to be solid. So I set it up so that I keep the thickness there. So the reason I'll roll it in the powder versus sifting it is I'm not as concerned about getting a really clean, even coat. And if I do that, I'll do it sifting the powder onto the piece, but I can roll it up on the piece as well without getting it super clumpy and awful. But I'm more worried about saturation than I am about cleanliness of the application. So when I'm rolling in the powder, what I'm watching for and what I'm making sure I do is that I keep all the weight supported by my arms so that I don't want to set into the powder. I don't want to just press it down in there, because what's going to happen when you're turning then is I'm going to end up folding the glass, which is going to trap little air bubbles in there. So I make a point that the weight is all supported and it's just lightly touching the powder. So I treat it the same as I would using the marver so that I can stay in shape and get the shape I want with it. And depending on the type of color depends on how many coats I get it. There's certain colors that are, just a little stickier, so they pick up easier. They're a little denser. This turquoise blue I'm using isn't too bad, but I'll usually do, if I want a good deep coat of it, I'll do usually 3 to 4 coats. Again, same with the block. I'm not pushing it into the shape of the block. It's the turning and movement with the block is what allows it to shape to that. And especially with color on the end, I want to make sure that I don't use a dry block, because I'm going to end up with scarring and potentially some change in the color. Soft. And when I'm working here, I'm cupping it basically at the bottom third so that I'm blowing up the shoulder. Stop. But keeping that bottom section there thick and solid, which will give me a good shape to gather over, but also it keeps that tail section nice and thick. Now, after touching it with wood or with paper, when it's on the exterior, the color is, I always want to take a quick flash, so give me a flash for a few seconds, because that'll take the reduction off of that. What the reduction is the oxygen starvation. Basically, it's reacting with an oxygen-starved environment, and that's what the fire is doing to it with the paper and the wood. Plus, it helps to burn off any ash or any little thing that's on the surface for when I go back in and gather. I'm going to take a pipe pull for me and then I'll grab it back from you. So when you have good assistants, use them. So we'll switch to the black powder now for the exterior. And as I was saying earlier, there's certain colors that are just a little stickier than others in powder form, and black being one of them. And that allows it to pick up really clean and nicely and easily. But, we'll go again 2 or 3 times so I make sure I've got a nice dense coverage, because we will end up carving through this in the final piece in the sandblaster. The other thing that is important is the type of color you're using. And certain blacks do what's called furring, and what that is when I punty onto it, it's going to pull, the color stands up as it gets hot and will pull off the surface of your glass. And black is one of those colors that tends to do that. So I use Gaffer 50 because it's a black that doesn't fur. So I don't have to worry about my punty ripping off my coat or ripping off my piece and me dropping it 3/4 of the way through the piece. I'll hand it to you up at the glory hole too, Tyler.
What was that?
I'll hand it to you at the glory hole. You can take
Okay.
the last seat. You want the door at all?
No, you're good.
Yeah. Just grab the hook. So the other thing when you're watching people work to pay attention to really is body positioning. And you don't want to be all hunched over like this working. You'll get tired faster, you'll wear out your muscles. Hello? So good posture helps to allow you to keep working in this material for a much longer time. Stop. Take a deep.
Might be ready for your door on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What kind of heater are you looking for?
Just a general overall heat. You want it all the way, or is that good?
That's good. Drop it all?
Yep. So what we're doing is we're actually lengthening it out, so I'm setting up where the head's going to go. You see that bulge in the center is going to be the main part of the body, but I also want to lengthen out where that neck and head is going in this piece. Soft air. Stop. Take that same heat.
Let's actually pop this all the way open, otherwise the pipe's gonna get real hot.
Yep. That's good. Perfect. So you see I lengthened that head out and the neck out probably quite a bit longer than I needed to. But the reason I did that is because on the other side we'll lose some of that as we set up the width of the head and pull out the beak from it. So I'm setting the jack line earlier so that I have thickness there. Soft. Stop. All right. Quick flash. Just from the shoulders down.
Sure.
Heavy cap.
Yeah.
That's good. Just needed to start so I could tell which was my front and my back. What we did is create the back of our raven there. Now what I'm doing is I'm heating up that bottom part that I'm going to end up pulling the tail out of. So if we look at it, we've got our wings will be set up through here. Our tail's going to be down through this back end and our head is there. When I'm setting up my torch, I keep my Ranger mid-range my gas and oxygen at 25 and 5. That gives me a good pressure on both of those and allows me to not boil the glass. I keep a little bit away. I don't keep the torch just blasted on it. The other thing is you'll see when I come back, I'm going to grab out 2 points. And the reason I'm grabbing out 2 points is the glass is going to follow whatever point you pull from. And so if I pull from one center point, then I'm going to end up with a narrow tapered tail, which is not what I want. I want a wider, more fanned out. Yeah, just see the bottom end. And so by keeping in that fanned out shape, or to keep it in that fanned out shape, I'm going to pull from those points, which is going to cause that to pull wide, like I want the tail to finish. Yep, perfect. Flash?
Flash?
Heat.
You made body down?
Yes, please.
Do you want 180s yet?
No, we'll switch to that here in a minute.
Okay.
That's good. Can you actually grab the little air gun from the other line? And we'll switch them out. Just the connect one. So what I'm doing there is I'm just giving it a little blast of air to cool it down, because I don't want it to pull on those little points. I want it to pull behind those points. And that'll allow me to have a little bit cooler area with which to pull. Take a quick flash and then I'll get it.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, give me that same heat again. You can actually heat to about there.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. That's fair.
Okay.
So a lot of it can be oftentimes just building up heat where you need it. And making sure you're losing heat or keeping heat out of the areas you don't want it to be in so that it moves the way you want it to. All right, so from here on out we'll go 180s.
Okay. Saved up?
Yeah. Okay. So right now Taylor switched to, instead of turning 360, she's going basically on 180s. And the reason for that is we don't want the piece to twist itself. So centrifugal force will pull it and twist it if she were to stay 180, 360 turning. So that's why we've switched over now and we're just doing the 180s. So now I'm going to move back up and I'm going to start working on the shoulders here a little bit and start working back down. What that'll allow is that part to set up I've got the tail started where I need things at. And you can start to see the shoulders of the wing start to form there. By the way I pulled it, that flattening allowed that, as I pulled that ridge to come through. Alrighty.
Flash.
Give it a decent heat.
Okay. Got that powder.
What's that?
You got that powder.
No, that's perfect. Same heat. So what I'm doing right now is I'm setting up the underside of the wing. And on the previous one, I pushed down a little bit on that edge to set where the wing connects into the neck. That'll soften out a little bit as we stretch out more, but this will give me more of sort of that pull, that swoop of the wing that I'm looking for. And now we come to the point where I'll set up the bottom edges of the wing, which will help me to start to set up and finalize that tail shape. So where it's going to end up attaching to the other glass piece is right here. Flash. So what I did was I used the torch to heat that edge, and if I torch and flash, what that does is it allows that temperature to soak in to the glass so that I can move and mark a larger area, versus if I torch and pull, then it's just going to affect more of the surface area. Flash. So it's a lot of small moves to get where you need to be oftentimes. So right now I'm just torching the moil just so that it stays nice and warm. This gives me a second to just assess where everything's at and make sure I'm setting it up the right way so that I end up with the final form I want. Flash. So the other thing is, I know that that's going to stretch longer, so I'm just defining that edge up just a little bit more so that it does pull the way I want it to. Okay, so that'll allow me then to have a colder, more solid point that I can pull from.
Now we're getting there.
Flash. I'm just cooling the tail down. And then I'm going to torch that midsection because I want it to pull just a little bit on the body. So it's not quite so bulbous. So I've got a cold spot to pull from. There we go. That's more the shape I want. Beauty. So we're going to end up cutting a lot of the tail off, but I also want to have it there to work with if I need to. I can always shorten things back, but it gives me a point to pull from. And I feel good with that. I don't make it so that it's super detailed. And the reason I don't make it super detailed is I do a lot, I'm going to go back in, I'm going to do a lot of carving into it, and so I don't want to overpower someone's eyes by forcing all that visual into the detail, and then me having carvings and or surface patterning on this that then fights against what the viewer's looking at. Try to put it all together. So we just spent all that time pulling this out. Now we're going to smash it down a little bit. And the reason for that is we don't need it to be quite as long and narrow. We want to just get a little bit of width to it. This will allow us then to have that width that I want. Thanks. So just pulling it on the outside edges. Again, I'm just making sure it stays nice and flat. As you can see, you end up more with the quick flash. We got to have the nice wide tail that we were going for in the start is by basically pulling out 2 points, stretching down, getting our length. We moved that back so we had the mass trimmed, and then we got the points that we could then pull out a little wider again. We'll just let that chill for a minute. So now what I'm doing is just spot heating those sections that I want to clean up. And again, you know, it's narrower there. I don't need to build up as much heat. But I'll torch, and because I just want that area to move. Flip. All right, so what we're going to do now is, normally I would do this with another piece of glass, but I'm going to use the metal mold to get the shape. But we're going to build up the heat. I'm going to cover this with paper, and this is the form I'm going to actually slump another piece of glass over that'll go on the bottom of this piece. And so what I'm going to do is, you can do this with glass to glass and take a piece of cold glass, flip, and then fit it to your hot glass so you have a perfect seat for it to fit in. Now what you do is you cover, if this metal was glass, you would cover an even, as clean as you can, clean sheet of wet paper over that. Flip. 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 It's really as simple as I'm just going to go and press it up into it.
Okay.
That's good. Stay that side. Flip. Flip back over. Flip. Perfect. Flash. Just a quick flash.
Okay.
So now what we've got is we've got actually a perfect seat that will match the line of that curve. Come on back. So that way, when I go to join them, I have that line and that curve, so it'll seat right into place, as you can see there. So that'll give me a nice clean attachment point when I glue those together. Alrighty, let's do a sculpture punty, please. What Taylor's setting up is a cold core punty. So she'll get a small gather. I'll do it on my big one there.
Okay.
She'll get a small gather on my punty, and then we'll get a strip gather over it. And what that cold core will do will allow the punty to set up very easily and quickly, so that but we'll have a very strong fused point right there where we've attached onto it. flash. Okay. Pull up just a little bit. Flip. Flip. Push up and forward a little bit. Piece of glass. Perfect. Good.
Nice.
That'll work. All right, so now we're going to pull the whole head and the beak out of that top section. And I set it up a little thicker because, again, I needed that mass to pull the beak from. Yeah, I could add bits on there. It would give me a slightly different look, which is fine, but for this specific piece, what I wanted was a very specific finish to it. And so I wanted to pull the whole piece from one singular body. So I'm torching back here because this section up here is going to be, you know, the first in the glory hole, the longest in the glory hole, last out. So it's going to get hot pretty easily. I want to build up some heat back here so that it does move the way I want it to when we pull on that front part, because that'll cause that neck to move just a little bit, which is what I want. I don't need to have a long, elongated crane of a neck. But this will allow me to stretch and lengthen it just a little bit. Okay, so that allowed me then to sort of thin a little bit where I wanted it to. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use a tool to go inside and start to lift up where that head's going to be sitting at. Okay. But I always want to preheat the steel because I don't want to put little surface cracks in the glass from cold steel going onto it. That's good? Oops, a little narrow. So I was a little narrower than I thought, but that's why I brought both tools over. Flip. And I'm not so much pressing as just rounding it back and forth, rubbing side to side, and letting gravity help to pull that up a little bit. Flash. All right. Sorry.
Just make sure I don't start on fire.
Yeah.
I like the jeans, so I'd like to keep those in there.
Flash? Just a quick flash. I'll step outside for this. Flash. So now we're going to cut in the lines of the beak or the mount, so we can separate the bottom and the top bill. Flash. So what I did is I curled those edges in, because now I can go and I can use my diamond shears to kind of compact that down. That'll leave me a little bit thicker there, which gives me a little more mass to work with and a little more structure to the object. Okay. Good flash. Okay. Flash. Flash. Just a little quick pop to the head. It's not bad, I just want to make it just a little round, a hair rounder. Flash.
Okay.
Yeah. Flip. Flash. So we're going to take a couple flashes where we'll just do the, I'm just going to torch the tail and the back end and let sort of the head itself cool down a little bit and stabilize before I pull out and finish the beak. Because I don't want to move the shape of the head and make that thinner or elongate it. So I'll just take a couple flashes here to build up temperature, back through here, make sure it doesn't crack, It's looking pretty good. Flash. Quick flash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the nostrils now, and you can use anything. I like using my shears here because I can get 2 even points. If I try to do it with a single tool, I'm much too shaky when I do things. Libby? There we go, flash. Flash. Quick flash, real quick. Have flash. We'll do that from outside the bench. Flip. So again, the key becomes also, getting outside the bench and really always working from the best angle, Flash. If that's not from inside the bench, step out, get outside the bench, stand inside the bench, always give yourself the best angle with which to do the move you need to. Again, I always will do, both of the beaks to a certain point before fully finishing it. That way I can, if I need to make adjustments, I can always go back in and do so, versus taking the top beak all the way through, and then all of a sudden I get to the end with the bottom beak and I'm like, it's not the right length. I made it too small on the big one, or there's just not the right balance on them. Flash. You all thought I was going to stick there, didn't you? Ha ha ha! Flash. That's good. So by cutting it that way, it gives me a thicker point on the tip. So my beak is stronger than down there. Flash. And yeah, instead of having a really weak, thin tip of my beak, I end up with a much sturdier, much more stable point. So I don't have to worry about it melting out or changing shape on me. And now we can go back and just clean it all up. Flash. Quick flash. Now I'll just finish the tips of the beak so we don't have these sloppy finishes to them, because we're obviously not making a raptor, so we don't need it to be the beak to hook over like that, but we don't want it also to be this blobby blob there, so flash. And we'll clean up the bottom beak, and we'll start flashing it down to put it away. Clean that up. I pulled it too rounded. So what I did is I rounded that out a little. I overheated it, and it didn't pull quite the way I wanted it to. So we'll just heat just a hair back, flash, and we'll fix it on this heat. There we go. So again, remembering that if I want just a little part of it to move, I'll torch and then move, pull, versus if I wanted that whole section of the beak to move like I did, then I torch and flash and make my move flash, which allows the heat to soak into the glass to move the larger area. Alrighty, we'll just start torching it down. I'm going to just ranger the punty a little bit here.
Sure. Get a stronger line.
Yeah, you know. And then I'll torch I'll alternate between ranger and mid-range for probably 3 heats here.
Okay.
Flash. Right now what we're doing is I'm just making sure that the body, everything's balanced out temperature-wise. I'm building up a little heat in our punty so that I just make sure I've got a good line there where it'll pop off at. And then we'll take it off and put it away. So we're getting prepped to put the piece into the annealer. So, you know, you'll see here the color of the clear is going to change a little bit, and the reason for that is I'm actually boiling the glass because, you know, now that it's done, I'm not really concerned. You know, I know that point's not going to be seen. I'm going to cold work that anyways. I don't care if it's got a little boil there. I'm just trying to build up some heat there. Whereas before, you saw I was moving the torch around quite a bit more. I didn't use quite as harsh of a flame. Flash. And that allowed me then to you know, have a much broader heat or a softer torch that's not going to boil onto my glass. And when you boil the glass, it's going to have this sort of yellowy discoloration that you just can't polish out.
Depending on the type of glass.
Sure.
Ours turns white.
Does it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys using Phillips?
Glasma.
Plasma, okay. Do you like it?
Yeah, it's beautiful glass.
Yeah.
The most optically pure Jackson can get.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it. I've never used it
It
though.
works just like system.
Oh, nice.
I barely noticed a difference.
You guys used to melt system, right? Or no? Has it always been?
If they did, that was before my time.
Yeah. You know, just take one last check, make sure everything's in line enough to be decent. Flash. I'll have you take one more heat, and then I'll have you glove up. I'll take 2 flashes with it. No, I'll open the left side door. You can just set it in the center there. Flash. Next, go ahead and glove up. So I'm just touching that jack line there with, you know, steel that's a little bit colder. That adds some stress into that point. Helps it to break a little easier. Yeah, and it's always better to take an extra flash or 2 before you take it off, just to be safe. September gets a little lean.
Just set it on the belly.
Yeah, if you can. Beautiful.